That one glorious word represents more than just the geography between the Sabine and the Rio Grande. It represents a unique idea and way of life. A life of rugged individualism, proud self-reliance, gritty toughness, and fierce independence. That is what made Texas, and that is what will save her again. Howdy, folks. Sam Houston here. I want to thank you for tuning into the Feed Bandit podcast. Feed Bandit is the Texas first outdoors brand built by rabid Texans, for rabid Texans, and all those who aim to be one someday. We unapologetically promote the ideals that shape our Texas pride and Texas first patriotism through our love of hunting, the outdoors, and the gear and apparel we create. Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Check us out at feedbandit.com. And to repeat that great rallying cry from a former colleague of mine, liberty or death. Now, enough of my talking. Here are a couple of bandits that love Texas as much as I do. Enjoy.
Howdy, folks, faithful followers of the Feed Bandit podcast. Corn Bandit coming back at you with another solo Feed Bandit podcast. But boy, let me tell you, this one is, this is an exciting one. In fact, this really could be one of the more exciting ones I've ever done, just by virtue of the fact of what we are talking about right now. So, yeah, it is. It's been a heck of a couple of days of hunting here for the old Corn Bandit. Finally, and I mean finally, I have had a duck hunt that has been worth talking about, which is absolutely just beyond exciting to me. Of course, again, as I always say, every hunt is a good hunt because, it's better than not hunting, right? Yeah, of course. But it has been a long time, quite frankly, probably 3 or 4 years, to where I actually had a real good duck hunt. A duck hunt that, a lot of seasoned vets would say, oh, no, that was a great hunt. Well, I finally had one. Ironically enough, though, it's the timing of this hunt that is absolutely bizarre. So, kind of want to talk about that first, then we'll actually get into the whole, what happened, how did it all go down? Because again, it's very interesting. So, typically early season duck hunts, the birds are nowhere near as trained, right? Okay, they've they're fresh coming off their summer grounds. They're heading north, they're heading south rather. And what are they focused on? Well, they're focused on migrating. They're focused on feeding, trying to get to their winter grounds. They don't freeze to death. Okay. Obviously, that has been it's been their focus for all eternity. It's kind of woven into their fabric per se. Along the way, of course, they're going to run into, a lot of hunters, okay? And so by virtue of the fact that Texas is on kind of their, really kind of at the end of their journey, okay? Because there's a lot of birds that winter on the Texas Gulf Coast, Mexico, and just in Texas in general. They have their dance card's been punched, right? They've seen a lot of hunters, they've seen a lot of decoys, things of that nature. So, but early in the season, that's not so much the case. Now, of course, in order to have a decent hunt early in the season, what has to happen, right? Well, you actually have to have cool weather. And really, the past couple of years, that has just not been a thing. I mean, there's ducks coming down, right? But not in the numbers that there used to be. And when I say used to be, I'm talking, 5 or 6 years ago, something of that nature. When we were killing 35 ducks a season because we had a bunch of them coming down. Remember, a duck would rather just camp out in Kansas or Nebraska if that's a hell of a lot easier than flying to Texas and New Mexico or Texas and Mexico. Um, and so the ducks really only going to go as far, I believe, as the weather will push them. Okay, now I think that's probably not the case with blue-winged teal. Blue-winged teal kind of instinctually go down to Colombia and Mexico. Of course, if they were smart, they just camp out here because there's only a 2-week teal season, but nobody's told them that. So, like I say, early season ducks are typically a little bit easier to decoy. You use a lot of decoys. Okay, how many decoys do I use? Man, honestly, all season I really used about. I really throw out a dozen. I'll just be very honest with you. I have not experimented really with using a lot more than about a dozen decoys early in the season, and I think that's because I have a wind problem. Okay, where I hunt at Rancho Bandito, especially early in the season, unless I got a north wind, I ain't getting any wind at prime, at prime time when these ducks are flying in. It's just not happening. Okay. The only time I'm ever going to get any real serious wind is when the wind's coming out of the north. Okay, so that is that is a real problem because in November, December, some of the times it's tough to time up those fronts. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if the front's blowing on a Tuesday, I'm not going to be there, right? And then inevitably the wind is going to go back to the go back to the south anyway. So. I don't get to hunt a lot of north winds where, especially early in the season where, the decoys are going to be rocking, anything of that nature. So that's why I put out 12, because I think that if a duck's flying by, okay, and they see 12, semi-stagnant decoys, that's going to be a hell of a lot better than 24, okay? Just my opinion. I think also the more decoys you use, the more of a chance you have to potentially screw something up as far as the placement of your decoys. Now, as far as motion decoys are concerned, I do not have a spinning wing decoy. I use them for dove and I use them for teal, but for teal hunting, I just use a little Dove Mojo, and it works great. And yes, teal are incredibly susceptible to a spinning wing mojo. Yeah, I bet your early season ducks would be too, but I just don't use it. I use one of these, I don't know what the technical term is, but it's I call it a butt splasher. It's basically a decoy that sits in the water, and then there's a little motor on it, and the decoy rocks back and forth and spits water everywhere. And I use that specifically because of how stagnant the water is a lot of times when I got decoys. And I've used one for a while now, and I think it has made a tremendous difference. I am thinking about going to 2. They're not cheap, but I really think it could enhance the way I'm doing things. So anyway, that is kind of that's kind of my setup, at least for early season. And the setup for late season is very similar as well, except for a couple of little differences. So, while we're talking about it, since this is just the recap here, of the season. So, I did not have a lot of high hopes for this season. Okay, like I say, the past couple of years they've been dreadful. Okay, I've been lucky to get 8 or 9, 10 to 12 ducks, something of that nature. It's just not been good. And that's frustrating, and mind you, that's ducks that I'm calling and doing all that kind of stuff for. That's also ducks that I am working. That's also when I'm jumping tanks. Okay. So, we just haven't had the birds. Well, this year was a little bit different. We actually had our first big cold front in October, and I actually remember being at Rancho Bandito trying to get a late season dove hunt in, and doing a little deer hunting too. And I remember seeing a ton of ducks. And this was about 2 weeks before the season. And when I say a ton of ducks, I'm talking 50 of them. I mean, it was really, really cool. And of course, I know that, they ain't going to hold around until November 9th or whenever the opening was. But I thought to myself, okay, all right, maybe this early front, was kind of, maybe this will be a sign of things to come. And overall in 2024, I think we did have more fronts, and I definitely had some better hunts. Okay, and again, what's my definition of a good hunt? If I shoot two ducks, if I shoot a single duck, I'm happy. That's kind of the way it's come to be. Back in the day, again, 4 or 5 years ago, it was two ducks, and I was happy. Now I've toned that down to one duck, and I'm pretty darn happy. So this year, I had a couple of hunts where I shot two ducks, three ducks. Hell, I even shot four ducks one time. That was great, and that was very exciting for me, and just to be able to get out there and do that. So. I really spend a lot more time duck hunting, I feel like, in the later seasons. So that's going to be, around Christmas time and then into January. And so here's the trick, okay? I do think we see a little bit more action as far as ducks numbers are concerned later in the month, later in December and January, strictly because of the fact that the cold fronts are coming through, okay? Well, talking about cold fronts right now, I mean, we have had a significant amount of cold fronts, and they brought ice and snow, okay, to Dallas and to Texas in general. I mean, as we speak right now, it's January some odd. Houston's getting 6 inches of snow. I mean, it's Armageddon type stuff. So that's crazy. But so that kind of weather is going to push those birds down. They're not going to camp out, because the way I always look at it, I'm like, well, shit, if it's cold here, what's it in Kansas, And so that's kind of one of those things you gotta take a look at. Well, my hunts kind of after Christmas were pretty darn good, guys. Okay, I was averaging three ducks a hunt, and I was very happy with that. Okay, it was fantastic. We actually had some decent numbers, and it wasn't just diver ducks. There were some actual puddle ducks. Hey, I got no beef against shooting diver ducks, okay? But the puddle ducks are a little easier to clean, and I think they kind of taste better too. Of course, you're putting them to gumbo, stuff like that. And who can really tell the difference? But fast forward to this past Friday morning. Okay, so that would have been January 17th. Let me give you the exact date just for the sake of giving you the exact date. Yep, January 17th, okay? There's an annual trip that my dad and some of his friends go on to another friends of theirs ranch in Albany. And we decided, I tell you what, let's go down to the Rancho Bandito and spend the night. Then we'll head on to Albany. It'll be a pretty drive, and just we could do it, right? And my dad wanted to get the pig hunt in, so did his buddy. And I said, well, shoot, gosh, if we're going, I might as well get my last duck hunt in, on January 17th. So that's what we decided to do. So that week prior, that Monday, I had spoke to our ranch hand. I said, hey, keep your eyes open for ducks. Let me know where they are. The usual, because he comes in about 7 a.m. or so. And the report was pretty startling. He got back to me and said, Richard, there's 50 ducks out there. I'm like, oh my gosh, all different kinds, mallards, pintails, things of that nature. So, I can't help but get a little excited, sue me, I can't help it. And he says, he says, yeah, they seem pretty comfortable. We've been coming and going with equipment and doing our normal stuff, and they're not doing anything. I'm like, okay, well, that's fantastic. So I ended up, talking to him on Thursday. He's like, oh yeah, no, they're still here. They're still here. In fact, he says, I think there might be a couple of more, which that actually kind of translates because, again, it was 74 at Rancho Bandito on Friday, and now it's a high of 34. Okay, so a major front. Now, of course, you always get the risk of blowing those birds out of there for them going further south, but Thankfully, that was not the case. So, for the first time in multiple years, I was actually optimistic that, God, man, I actually might have a pretty decent hunt. And so when we roll in on Thursday night, the Thursday afternoon rather, there they are. They're in good shape. So I went and I got my gear, and it was all it was all set for Friday morning. I was real excited too because I'd only gotten one chance to hunt with my new gun. I had asked Santa Claus for a new duck gun, and so I've got lots of 12 gauges and whatnot, but the new trend seems like now people are shooting ducks with 28 gauges. Man, God bless those guys. Good for them. I'm not there yet, okay, as far as confidence is concerned. So I asked for a 20 gauge. Always wanted a Benelli. Never owned one. Buddies have had them, and they love them, so on and so forth. So I said, you know what? I'm asking for a Benelli. So I got this Benelli Super Black Eagle, blah, 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 20 gauge, okay? It's got a 26-inch barrel, comes with multiple extended chokes. It's camo, and boy, let me tell you, that thing is it is just lights out. Now, I did not time to pattern it, okay? Santa actually brought me 2 boxes, I think of Remington heavy shot 3-inch shells. And let me tell you, man, those darn things are super effective. I mean, you can punish ducks with them. Anyway, I was excited again to get out there and try this gun out. So, okay, wake up Friday morning, okay, go out there and I say, okay, here's what I'm going to do my decoys. I'm going to do my decoys the same way I did when I was the last hunt I was there. So right in front of my little blind, I've got this pool, okay, and it looks like a drop, okay. So it's got a little neck, a neck that's probably 2 or 3 yards wide, okay, and then it opens up into this big pool. And the pool is shallow. It's always been a favorite spot for these ducks, and it's pretty substantial. It's pretty big, It's 30 yards by 30 yards, okay. And again, like I say, it narrows down to this little neck and then spills out into the rest of the tank. So it's good. So what I did was when that last hunt around Christmas time or whatever is I put the decoys kind of in that neck, right? And so it looked like that they were kind of tinkering with wanting to go out there into the main tank, but it left a great landing zone behind them in the big 30 by 30 pool. Okay, so that seemed to work. I had ducks that landed in the pool, was able to Arkansas skillet shot them, as they say, and we were in great shape. So going back to what I was talking about earlier, as far as my strategy is concerned, the difference between early season and late season is even more so about those ducks getting wise to having a whole bunch of stagnant decoys. Now, as luck would have it, okay, a couple of things were in my favor. Well, everything was in my favor this morning. That morning, that is. First of all, it was cloudy. Okay, it wasn't really that cool, but I had a wind right at first light, which that never happens. Okay, and the wind was coming out of the south, so I had some rocking. I had my little butt splasher, like I say, so I had that going as well. Also had a really low ceiling. There's a little bit of fog in there, so that also kind of helped, mask the fact that my decoys weren't alive. The other thing is, instead of throwing a dozen decoys out there, I threw 4. I threw 4 plus the butt splasher. Okay, so the butt splasher was able to give all the other 4 decoys a little bit of movement plus the wind. So I thought I was in pretty good shape. I also cut down on calling. Okay, in fact, I didn't even use my mallard call, so to speak. I used my little teal whistle, and that is kind of my go-to. So, one of the problems I've always had, I think a lot of hunters have had, is I'm hunting. This tank is 10 acres. Okay, right now it's probably 8. Okay, because it's not completely full, but it's still a substantial body of water to duck hunt. And live bait is very, very difficult. Okay. And so I've always had a problem with ducks coming in real early, landing, and then as it gets lighter, a little bit later in the morning, the ducks are seeing the other live ducks, and they're like, "Well, shit, I ain't going over to that. I'm not going over to that corner and that little teardrop. I'm just going to go over here and land by these ducks that are quacking at me and are alive." Well, that didn't happen this morning. On that morning, that is. And again, I was just really, really, really stunned that did not happen. In fact, legal shooting light, I think, was 7:05, and I had onesie twosie on the wire. And again, I was expecting quite a few because of everything that I had been seeing in the reports. I had onesie twosies on the wire. Well, at about 7:08, here they come, and the sky was full of ducks, and none of them were ringnecks or redheads or anything like that. They were all mallards, gadwalls, some pintails, and of course a truckload of teal. You guys been following the channel or whatever for a while. You know me. I am an indiscriminate duck hunter. I do not hold out for just greenheads. Now, obviously, if I've shot, a mallard Susie, which is a hen, then obviously I'm not going to shoot another mallard hen because you can only have one, right? But when it comes to teal or gadwalls or widgeons, I ain't going to hold out and wait on something to fly in there. So the rest of the morning was just incredible. I had ducks in my face the entire time. And I was able to successfully put down 5 teal, 3 of which were drakes. I mean, we're talking 10, 15 minutes after shooting light was concerned. Probably could have had a limit. Definitely could have had a limit, but I dropped them all in our little teardrop. And I had thought at one point I had gotten a double. So I said, I'm not going to chance it. Obviously the limit is 6 ducks in aggregate. And I did not want to fudge and shoot a 7th. I've always been under the philosophy that, if I've been blessed and given this opportunity to go out here and have this incredible hunt, which I've not had in years, man, it's just not right for me to go out there. And even it would have been unintentional to go out there and accidentally shoot over my limit. I'm not going to do that. So it was incredible. I went out there, the ducks were still flying, and just quickly picked up all those teal. Sure enough, I just had 5. Okay. So I had one more to go, and it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I did not get that 6th duck. Naturally, I don't care. Because that was one of the greatest duck hunts I've had, like I say, in 5 years. To be able to be covered up in that many birds, in that many different types of birds, okay? It wasn't just teal. Like I say, it was mallards and pintails. I don't see a lot of pintails, okay? And just groups and groups and groups of them, widgeons whistling, that nasally quack of the gadwall. It was just so cool, and I just am so fortunate to have that kind of hunt. After it's been so long since I've had a really good duck hunt. So one thing we talked about in an earlier episode, how many ducks had you shot, and I think it went from a high of 35 ducks in a season back in like 2019, and it slowly trailed off. And last year was 12. And I remember doing the podcast saying, okay, I'm on a better track here to potentially shoot more than I did last year, because I think I had 4 or 5 in the bag, and it was November. I said, so, my goal is going to be try to shoot, over 12, try to reverse that trend. And I did. And I think I ended up with 18. So that is fantastic. Obviously, love the meat, love the experience. Ended up with 18 ducks for this season. Season's gonna be over in a couple days. That was my last attempt. So I'm pretty excited. Something else that was very, very interesting, leaving Rancho Bandito, we went, like I say, we were going to Albany. It was a 2.5-hour trip. And on that trip, we passed a lot of different tanks, a lot of different stock tanks, okay? And I did not see another duck once we got out of the area where Rancho Bandito is. And that's, we're going from Rancho Bandito area up to Albany, okay, where there's the flyway is a little bit more pronounced there. Didn't see a single duck, which was interesting. Did end up seeing quite a few on a particular body of water on this property we were at, but that wasn't until Saturday. So, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Again, man, what a treat, to be able to do that. Well worth the wait and super exciting. So, of course, now I'm like, all right, well, here we go. What's the 2025, 2026 season going to look like? Who knows, right? But actually, in regards to that, nesting habitat's looking pretty darn good, which is exciting. So, hey, we will see exactly what is going on, a little bit down the road here. So, it's officially the off season. We are basically done shooting deer, and it's time to get those off season projects going. Turkey season's on the way. Protein feeders need to be filled up, especially with this big cold front, big cold snap. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, but. Anyway, that is all I have for you today on this podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you learned something too. I'm blessed to be able to go out there and have access to these properties to do what I do, and hope you're finding it useful. So remember, go Texan and support your local feed store.
Well, I hope the Bandits gave you an interesting episode that either entertained or educated you. Or better yet, both. Hell, I told them this podcasting thing looks harder to do than defeating Santa Ana. So if you would, please help them out by sharing it with all your like-minded friends to help the Bandits get the word out. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear and apparel to support the cause of Texas. Remember, Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition. Protect the legacy. Finally, as I said some time ago on the eve of the great battle, and I vigorously repeat here again, be men, be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Well, fellow bandit, until next time.